You know, for centuries, there's been this one organization that's just completely shrouded in mystery. It's sparked endless conspiracy theories and, honestly, some pretty romantic myths. But what is Freemasonry? Really? In this explainer, we're going to cut through all that fiction and get right to the facts, pulling directly from people inside the fraternity to understand its true history and its real purpose. So let's peel back those layers of myth and mystery together.
When you hear the word Freemasonry, what pops into your head? For most people, it's images of secret handshakes, hidden symbols, powerful men pulling strings behind the scenes. But according to the members themselves, the reality is something way more personal and philosophical. We're going to break down what it is, where it came from, and why it's had such a huge impact on world history.
Okay, so to really get what Freemasonry is all about today, you gotta go back to the beginning. And its history, well, it's a lot less romantic than the old myths about ancient temple builders, but it's arguably a lot more interesting.
The most popular story, the one you've probably heard a dozen times, is that Freemasonry is a direct descendant of the powerful stonemason guilds. The actual operative masons who built the incredible cathedrals and castles of Europe, passing down secret knowledge from generation to generation.
Yeah, but here's the thing. That story, it's not really accurate. Historical records actually show that stonemason guilds were often less organized and less powerful than other trades, like carpenters or mill workers. And the reason is pretty simple. The demand for their work was super inconsistent. So the real origin story is a little more complicated than that.
So how did we get from a group of guys literally working with stone to a philosophical fraternity? Well, the real path happened in a few key steps. It all started back in the late 1500s in Scotland, when the King's Master of Works ordered the stonemason lodges to start keeping records. That's a huge deal. Then, a century later, these lodges began accepting what they called speculative members. These were gentlemen who weren't builders at all, but they were really drawn to the group's moral code and philosophy. Then, boom, a catastrophe became a catalyst. The Great Fire of London in 1666 created this 50-year-long construction boom, which brought craftsmen and thinkers together in one city. And this all led up to 1717, when 4 of these London lodges got together and formed the very first Grand Lodge. That's what made it official, really cementing the shift from building structures to building character.
Okay, so we've got the history down. That brings us to the big question. Why? If Freemasonry isn't about building cathedrals anymore, what is its actual purpose today?
The way they explain it, it all boils down to this really simple but powerful idea, which they call the Masonic equation. The entire point of the fraternity is to give men a set of tools and a framework, symbolized by the working tools of a stonemason, to practice self-discipline and to seek knowledge, all with one goal in mind: self-improvement.
And getting these differences is absolutely crucial to understanding what it's all about. It's a system of morality, but it is not a religion. It does require you to believe in a supreme being, but it never, ever tells you what to call that being. It's an individual journey to become a better person. It's not a social club for networking or making business deals. And it's described as serious work for serious men, definitely not just a casual hobby.
So when they say serious work, that brings up a really important question. What kind of person is this system actually for? Is it supposed to be for everyone?
And the answer you get from inside the fraternity is surprisingly blunt. It's no. The sources are crystal clear that Freemasonry isn't a good fit for all men, and actually probably not even for most men. And this has nothing to do with your social status or how much money you have. It's all about a specific internal mindset.
So who is it for? It really comes down to this. It's for men who are ready to do the hard work of looking in the mirror. A good candidate is someone who's willing to be brutally honest with himself, who sees that the most important work he can do is on the inside, and who's ready to make what is described as a lifelong commitment, to basically draw a line in the sand and dedicate himself to becoming a better person.
All right, for our last section, let's zoom all the way out. If this is a system for building better men, what kind of splash has it made on the world stage? Well, its place in history is a story of really stark contrasts.
And man, this contrast is it's incredible when you look at who has embraced Freemasonry and who has tried to destroy it. In one column, you have nation builders, legendary composers, and presidents, guys like George Washington and Winston Churchill. In the other column, a list of history's most notorious tyrants: Hitler, Mussolini, Stalin, all of whom outlawed Freemasonry and persecuted its members. And you gotta ask why. Well, totalitarian regimes demand absolute loyalty to the state. An organization that encourages men to think for themselves, to govern their own morality, and to form bonds that cross national borders is, by its very nature, a direct threat to that kind of power.
And this constant attack from despots leads to a really powerful idea from the source material.
The thought is that the core Masonic principles of bringing men from all different faiths and backgrounds together to focus on shared morality and harmony are so fundamental that if everyone actually practiced them, they could be a model for peace on a global scale.
So at the end of the day, we're left with this, right? We have an organization whose philosophy has been embraced by champions of liberty and fiercely opposed by history's worst tyrants. It's not some secret society trying to take over the world, but a system dedicated to making a man better from the inside out. And maybe that's exactly what makes its core idea, that free people improving themselves can change the world, so powerful, and to some, so very threatening.